Lily Martinez stood in front of her bedroom mirror and smiled at her reflection. She brushed her long brown hair one more time and adjusted her favorite blue sweater. At 17, Lily was known as one of the prettiest girls at Cedar Grove High School. She was smart too. Her report cards always made her father proud. "Lily, are you ready yet? It's almost 7, Joe Martinez called from downstairs. "Coming, Dad." Lily grabbed her small purse and took one last look in the mirror before heading downstairs. Joe Martinez sat at the kitchen table reviewing bills. He was a tall man with kind eyes and strong hands that showed years of hard work as a mechanic. Since his wife died when Lily was just 8 years old, Joe had raised their daughter alone. They had a special bond that everyone in their small Ohio town noticed. "So tell me about this boy again," Joe said, looking up from his papers. "The one you're meeting tonight." Lily rolled her eyes but smiled. "His name is Ryan, Dad. He goes to Westfield High. We met at Katie's birthday party last month, remember? He's really nice and he's on their swim team." Joe nodded slowly. He always worried about Lily dating. She was his whole world. "And you're just going to the mall, right? Movie and maybe some food at the food court?" "Yes, Dad. Just like I told you yesterday and this morning and an hour ago," Lily said with a laugh. "He's meeting me there at 7:30. I'll be home by 10, I promise." Joe stood up and pulled out his wallet. He handed Lily $40. "Just in case," he said. Lily took the money and gave her father a quick hug. "Thanks, Dad. Love you." "Love you too, kiddo. Be careful, okay? Text me when you get there and when you're heading home." "I will," Lily called as she headed out the door. Joe watched from the window as his daughter walked down their driveway. Something made him call out to her one more time. Lily turned around, her face glowing in the early evening light. "Have fun," Joe said, with a wave. Lily smiled and waved back before continuing down the street toward the bus stop that would take her to the Cedar Grove Mall. Joe watched until she disappeared around the corner. He had no way of knowing that this ordinary Friday evening in October would be the beginning of a nightmare. At 8:15 p.m., Joe's phone buzzed with a text from Lily. "At the mall now. Ryan's running late. Movie starts at 9. Love you." Joe texted back, "Have fun. See you at 10. By 10:30 p.m., Joe was checking his watch every few minutes. Lily was never late. She knew how much her father worried. He tried calling her cell phone, but it went straight to voicemail. By 11:00 p.m., Joe was pacing around the living room. He called Lily's friend Katie. "No, Mr. Martinez, I haven't heard from her tonight," Katie said, sounding worried. "Did you try Ashley? They were talking about the date at lunch today." Joe called Ashley next, but she hadn't heard from Lily either. By midnight, Joe got in his truck and drove to the mall. The main stores were closed, but the movie theater area was still open. Joe searched everywhere: the theater, the food court, the parking lot. No sign of Lily. The mall security guard noticed Joe's frantic searching. "Can I help you, sir?" "My daughter," Joe said, his voice shaking. "She was supposed to meet a boy here tonight for a movie. She's not answering her phone, and she's never late coming home." The security guard, whose name tag read Frank, looked concerned. "What's your daughter's name? What does she look like?" "Lily. Lily Martinez. She's 17, about 5'4", long brown hair. She's wearing a blue sweater tonight." Frank nodded. "Let me call my partner and we can check the security cameras. When was she supposed to be here?" "Around 7:30, Joe said. She texted me at 8:15 that she was here, but her date was running late." Frank led Joe to the small security office where monitors showed different areas of the mall. Frank's partner, a younger man named Steve, started going through the footage from earlier that evening. "There," Joe said, pointing at one of the screens. "That's Lily." The footage showed Lily walking into the mall at 7:48 p.m. She checked her phone, then sat on a bench near the movie theater. She waited for about 20 minutes, checking her phone several times. At 8:12 p.m., she got up and walked to the food court, which is when she must have sent the text to her father. The security footage followed Lily as she bought a soft drink and sat at a table alone. She checked her phone often, looking more and more upset as time passed. At 8:47 p.m., a woman approached Lily's table. The woman looked to be in her 30s, well-dressed with blonde hair. "Do you know who that is?" Frank asked. Joe shook his head. I've never seen her before. On the screen, the woman seemed to be talking to Lily. After a few minutes, Lily nodded and followed the woman toward the east exit of the mall. Can you follow them on the outside cameras? Joe asked, his heart racing. Steve switched to the exterior cameras, but by the time he found the right angle, there was no sign of Lily or the blonde woman in the parking lot. I need to call the police, Joe said, his voice breaking. Something's wrong. Lily would never leave with a stranger, and she would never not call me if she was going to be late. Frank put a hand on Joe's shoulder. I think that's a good idea, sir. We'll keep looking through the footage to see if we can find anything else. At the police station, Officer Linda Grant took Joe's statement. So your daughter was supposed to meet a boy named Ryan at the mall, but based on the security footage, he never showed up? That's right, Joe said. And then she left with some woman we don't know. Officer Grant typed on her computer. Does Lily have any history of running away? Any problems at home or school? No, absolutely not, Joe said firmly. We're very close. She's a good student. She has lots of friends. She would never just disappear without telling me. What about this Ryan? Do you know his last name? Joe felt a wave of guilt. No, I don't. She just said his name was Ryan and he went to Westfield High. Okay, we'll check with the school, Officer Grant said. In the meantime, I need a recent photo of Lily and a list of all her friends and any other places she might go. Joe handed over his phone with a photo of Lily from just a week earlier. She was smiling at the camera, her eyes bright and happy. Please find my daughter, he whispered. By morning, with still no word from Lily, the police had officially classified her as a missing person. They found her phone in a trash can near the mall's east entrance, but there were no other clues. The boy named Ryan was identified at Westfield High, Ryan Cooper, but when questioned, he claimed he never made plans to meet Lily that night. His parents confirmed he was at home studying for a test. The blonde woman seen with Lily couldn't be identified. The mall's cameras didn't get a clear shot of her face, and no one recognized her from the footage. As days turned into weeks, Joe's life became consumed with finding Lily. He put up posters all over Cedar Grove and neighboring towns. He appeared on local news stations, pleading for information. He hired a private investigator with money from his savings account. The police followed every possible lead. They checked border crossings, bus terminals, and train stations. They interviewed everyone who knew Lily. They searched wooded areas and abandoned buildings. Nothing. Joe couldn't sleep. He couldn't eat. His auto repair shop suffered as he spent every waking moment searching for his daughter. Each night, he would sit in Lily's room, surrounded by her things, praying for her to come home. I'll find you, Lily, he whispered to her empty room. I promise I'll never stop looking. As the first month without Lily came to an end, the harsh reality began to sink in. Lily Martinez had vanished without a trace, leaving behind a father whose life was now dedicated to a single purpose, finding his daughter no matter how long it took or how far he had to go. 6 months after Lily's disappearance, Joe Martinez was a changed man. His once neat home now looked like a detective's office. Maps covered the living room walls with pins marking possible sightings. Red string connected photos, notes, and newspaper clippings. The kitchen table disappeared under stacks of files and reports from the private investigator. Joe barely slept anymore. When he did, it was often on the couch surrounded by his research. Dark circles made his eyes look sunken, and he had lost so much weight that his clothes hung loose on his frame. His brown hair, now streaked with gray, hadn't been cut in months at all. Martinez Auto Repair. Joe's business partner Sam was doing his best to keep things running. Joe, you need to take care of yourself, Sam said one afternoon when Joe came by the shop. Lily wouldn't want to see you like this. Joe looked up with tired eyes. How would I know what she wants, Sam? I don't even know if she's alive. Amaro put his hand on Joe's shoulder. Don't talk like that. We have to keep hoping. The Cedar Grove Police Department had officially moved Lily's case to the cold case unit after 3 months of dead ends. Detective Laura Bennett, who had been assigned to the case from the beginning, still checked in with Joe regularly. We got the results back from that possible sighting in Indiana. Detective Bennett said during one of her visits to Joe's house. I'm sorry, but it wasn't Lily. Joe nodded, adding another red X to his map. What about the blonde woman from the mall footage? Any matches in the database yet? Nothing so far, Detective Bennett said. But we're still running the image through facial recognition programs. Sometimes these things take time. Time, Joe repeated bitterly. That's all I have now. Time to think about where my daughter might be. Time to imagine what might have happened to her. Detective Bennett looked around at Joe's wall of investigation. Have you been following any new leads on your own? Joe pointed to a section of his wall dedicated to human trafficking cases in the Midwest. There have been similar disappearances in 3 other states. Young girls, all taken from public places. I think they're connected. Detective Bennett studied the information Joe had gathered. I'll look into these. You might be onto something. As Detective Bennett was leaving, she turned back to Joe. The department is organizing a new search of the wooded area east of the mall this weekend. Would you like to join? Joe nodded. I'll be there. That Saturday, over 50 volunteers gathered to search the dense woods beyond the mall's eastern parking lot. They spread out in a line, moving slowly through the trees looking for any sign of Lily or evidence related to her disappearance. Joe walked alongside Katie's father, Greg. Their daughters had been friends since elementary school. How's Katie doing? Joe asked as they carefully examined the ground for any clues. She still has nightmares, Greg said quietly. She blames herself for not going to the mall with Lily that night. Says maybe if she had been there, whatever happened wouldn't have happened. Joe shook his head. It's not her fault. It's not anyone's fault except the person who took my daughter. By the end of the day, the search had turned up nothing useful. Joe returned home muddy and exhausted to find a message on his answering machine. Mr. Martinez, this is Ryan Cooper. It was the boy who was supposed to meet Lily at the mall that night. I need to talk to you. It's important. Please call me back. Joe's heart raced as he dialed the number. Ryan answered on the second ring. Mr. Martinez, thank you for calling back, Ryan said, his voice shaking. I haven't been honest with the police. I was supposed to meet Lily that night, but I got scared and never showed up. What do you mean you got scared? Joe demanded. What were you afraid of? It wasn't my idea to ask Lily out, Ryan explained. Some guys from my swim team dared me to do it. They said Lily was stuck up and wouldn't go out with someone from another school. I never meant to stand her up, but when I got to the mall, I saw her waiting and I couldn't go through with tricking her like that. Joe gripped the phone tightly. So you just left her there? Did you see anyone approach her? A blonde woman, maybe? No, sir. I never went inside. I saw Lily through the window, and then I left. I'm so sorry. I should have told the truth from the beginning. After hanging up, Joe called Detective Bennett immediately to report what Ryan had told him. She promised to question Ryan again but warned Joe not to get his hopes up. It explains why he wasn't on the security footage, she said, but it doesn't tell us anything about the blonde woman or where Lily went. A year passed, then another. The wall in Joe's living room grew more complex. The red string web expanded. Joe sold his house and moved into a small apartment to pay for more private investigators. His auto repair shop was now being run entirely by Sam, who kept Joe on the payroll even though he rarely came to work. Joe's life revolved around finding Lily. He traveled to 3 different states following leads. He joined support groups for families of missing persons. He appeared on national television shows about unsolved mysteries. He created a website dedicated to finding Lily, which received thousands of visits but produced no solid leads. On Lily's 20th birthday, 3 years after her disappearance, Joe sat alone in his apartment looking at her photo. She would be in college now, maybe studying to become a teacher like she always wanted. Joe took out a small cupcake with a single candle. Happy birthday, Lily, he whispered, lighting the candle. Wherever you are, I hope you know I'm still looking for you. I'll never stop looking. The next day, Joe received a call from Detective Bennett. We've got a new lead, Joe. A woman in police custody in Kentucky says she has information about girls being trafficked across state lines. One of her descriptions matches Lily. Joe was in his car within minutes, driving the 4 hours to Kentucky. At the police station, Detective Bennett was waiting for him along with a Kentucky State Police officer. The woman's name is Donna Lewis, the officer explained. She was arrested for drug possession, but she's trying to make a deal by giving us information about a trafficking ring she was involved with. Joe's hands trembled. Can I speak with her? We arranged for you to observe her interview, Detective Bennett said. But you can't interact with her directly. It could compromise the investigation. From behind a one-way mirror, Joe watched as Donna Lewis, a thin woman with faded blonde hair, answered questions about the trafficking operation. When shown a photo of Lily, she nodded. Yeah, I remember her, Donna said. Pretty girl, they picked her up from some mall in Ohio. I helped transport her to the Kentucky safe house. What happened to her after that? The interviewer asked. Donna shrugged. I don't know for sure. Most girls get moved around. Some end up in Chicago, others go south to Atlanta or even Miami. It depends on who's buying. Joe felt sick. He leaned against the wall for support as Detective Bennett put her hand on his arm. Is she still alive? The interviewer asked Donna. Probably, Donna said. The pretty ones like her are valuable. They keep them alive as long as they can control them. For the first time in 3 years, Joe had confirmation that Lily had been taken by traffickers. It was both his worst fear and his greatest hope. If she had been trafficked rather than killed, there was still a chance she was alive somewhere. Back in Cedar Grove, Joe added all the new information to his wall. He contacted anti-trafficking organizations across the country. He studied routes and patterns of known trafficking networks. He learned about safe houses and how victims were moved between cities. His search gained new focus and urgency. On his wall, he created a new section labeled Kentucky Connection, with a fresh web of red string connecting to Chicago, Atlanta, and Miami. I'm getting closer, Lily, Joe said to her photo. I'm learning how they work. I'm going to find you, I promise. Joe didn't know that his search would take 2 more years, or that the answer would come from the most unexpected place. But for the first time since Lily disappeared, he had something concrete to follow. And for Joe Martinez, that small thread of hope was enough to keep going. 5 years had passed since Lily Martinez disappeared from the Cedar Grove Mall. Joe Martinez was now 52 years old, though he looked much older. His hair had turned completely gray. Deep lines marked his face like a map of the difficult journey he had traveled. His eyes, once bright and full of life, now held a permanent sadness that never went away, even when he smiled. Joe no longer lived in Cedar Grove. After selling his share of the auto repair shop to Sam, he had moved to Chicago. The information from Donna Lewis had pointed to Chicago as one of the main hubs for the trafficking network that had taken Lily. Joe rented a small, 1-bedroom apartment near the city center. The walls of his living room looked much like they had in Cedar Grove, covered with maps, photos, and red string connecting possible leads. Joe now worked as a driver for a rideshare company. The flexible hours allowed him to continue his search for Lily, while still earning enough money to live on. He had joined several anti-trafficking organizations in Chicago and volunteered his time whenever he could. He had become known among these groups as a tireless advocate and a valuable resource due to his years of research. On a cold February morning, Joe attended a meeting at Hope Finding, one of the largest anti-trafficking organizations in the city. The group's founder, Carol White, had become a close friend and ally in Joe's search. We've identified 3 new locations where girls might be held, Carol said, pointing to a map of Chicago. We're working with police to investigate, but it takes time to build enough evidence for a raid. Joe studied the map carefully. What? About the apartment building on Westmore Street? The one we suspected last month? Carol shook her head. Police checked it out. It was just a regular apartment building. No signs of trafficking activity. Joe sighed and rubbed his tired eyes. For every step forward, there seemed to be 2 steps back. Yet he refused to give up hope. After the meeting, Carol pulled Joe aside. How are you doing, Joe? Really? Joe gave a small shrug. Same as always. One day at a time. Have you thought any more about what we discussed? About talking to someone? Joe knew Carol was referring to the grief counselor she had recommended. "I'm not grieving, Carol. Lily is still out there." "I know it." Carol put her hand on Joe's arm. "I believe that, too. But what you're going through, this limbo, this not knowing, it's a special kind of grief. It's called ambiguous loss. Dr. Patel specializes in helping people in your situation." Joe hesitated, then nodded slowly. "Maybe. I'll think about it." The truth was, Joe had been struggling more lately. As the 5-year mark of Lily's disappearance approached, he found himself battling against despair. The leads had grown cold. The network they believed had taken Lily seemed to have changed its operations, making it harder to track. That night, Joe sat alone in his apartment looking at photos of Lily. She would be 22 now. Would he even recognize her if he saw her? Would she recognize him? He wondered what she might look like now, how her face might have changed as she grew from teenager to young woman. The next day, Joe went to see Dr. Patel, the grief counselor Carol had recommended. Dr. Patel was a kind-looking woman with gentle eyes and a calm voice. "Carol told me about your daughter," Dr. Patel said as Joe sat stiffly in her office. 5 years is a long time to carry this weight alone." Joe nodded but didn't speak. "Tell me about Lily," Dr. Patel suggested. Not about her disappearance, but about her, who she was. For the first time in years, Joe talked about Lily as she had been, not as a missing person, but as his daughter. He told Dr. Patel about how Lily loved to read adventure stories when she was little, how she would make up silly songs while doing chores, how she had been there for him after his wife died, making him smile even on the darkest days. "She sounds like a remarkable young woman," Dr. Patel said when Joe finally fell silent. "And it's clear how much you love her." "I just want to find her," Joe said, his voice breaking. "I need to know what happened to her." "Of course you do," Dr. Patel agreed. "But while you continue your search, you also need to take care of yourself." Lily would want that. Over the next few weeks, Joe continued seeing Dr. Patel while also maintaining his search. The sessions helped him process some of the emotions he had been carrying for years: the guilt, the anger, the fear. He began sleeping a little better. He even joined a support group for families of missing persons that met at a local church. In the support group, Joe met Maria, whose son had disappeared 3 years earlier. She understood Joe's pain in a way few others could. "Sometimes I feel like I'm the only one who still believes Miguel is alive," Maria told Joe one evening after a meeting. "My family wants me to have a memorial service. They say it would help us all move on." Joe nodded. "My sister says the same thing about Lily. But how can we mourn someone we don't know is gone?" Maria gave Joe a sad smile. "Exactly. This is why we need each other, to remind ourselves we're not crazy for holding on to hope." Spring arrived in Chicago, bringing with it a renewed sense of purpose for Joe. He had learned from Dr. Patel that taking care of his physical health could help his mental state as well. He started eating better and going for long walks along Lake Michigan. The exercise and fresh air cleared his mind and helped him think more clearly about Lily's case. On April 23rd, exactly 5 years and 7 months after Lily's disappearance, Joe was too restless to sleep. He paced around his small apartment, feeling that familiar ache in his chest that came whenever he thought too long about how much time had passed. Finally, he sat down on his couch and turned on the television, hoping to distract himself. He flipped through the channels mindlessly until he landed on a documentary about humanitarian work around the world. The program showed doctors and nurses helping people in poor countries. It wasn't something Joe would normally watch, but something about it caught his attention. The narrator explained how medical volunteers were traveling to remote villages in Guatemala to provide health care to people who had never seen a doctor before. The camera showed a group of young medical workers setting up a temporary clinic in a small village. Joe was about to change the channel when the camera panned across a group of volunteers distributing medicine to children. His finger froze on the remote. His heart seemed to stop beating. There for just a few seconds was a young woman who looked remarkably like Lily. Joe sat up straight, his eyes fixed on the screen. The woman had darker hair than Lily, cut shorter around her shoulders. But the way she moved, the way she tucked her hair behind her ear, it was so familiar. And when she smiled at one of the children, Joe felt like he had been struck by lightning. "Lily?" he whispered to the empty room. The camera moved on to show other volunteers, and Joe frantically grabbed for his phone to rewind the program. He watched the segment again and again, freezing the frame when the young woman appeared on screen. She looked older, of course. 5 years older. But Joe was certain. The distinctive way she tilted her head, the small birthmark near her collarbone, that was visible as she leaned forward. And most convincingly, the familiar smile that had haunted his dreams for 5 years. His hands shaking, Joe called Carol even though it was nearly midnight. "I found her," Joe said as soon as Carol answered. "I found Lily." "Joe, what are you talking about? Where are you?" "I'm at home. I was watching TV, a documentary about medical volunteers in Guatemala. Carol, I saw her. I saw Lily." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Are you sure, Joe? It's been 5 years and—" "I know my daughter," Joe interrupted, his voice firm. "It's her. I need to find out who made this documentary. I need to know where in Guatemala they were filming." "Okay, Joe. What's the name of the documentary?" Joe looked at the information on the screen. "It's called Healing Hands, Medical Volunteers Around the World. It was made by Global Vision Productions. I'll help you find them first thing in the morning," Carol promised. "Try to get some sleep, Joe." But sleep was impossible. Joe spent the rest of the night watching and rewatching the segment, studying every frame that showed the young woman who might be his long-lost daughter. After 5 years of searching, Joe Martinez had found a new lead, one that filled him with more hope than he had felt in years. Joe didn't sleep that night. He sat on his couch replaying the documentary segment over and over. Each time he saw the young woman's face, he became more certain it was Lily. The sun was just rising when his phone rang. It was Carol. "I couldn't wait until morning," she said. "I've been making calls. Global Vision Productions is based here in Chicago. They have an office downtown." Joe grabbed a pen. "Give me the address." "Joe, wait. They won't be open yet. And we need to be smart about this." Joe took a deep breath. Carol was right. After 5 years of searching, he couldn't afford to make mistakes now. "What do you suggest?" "I've contacted Bill Rogers at the FBI. He's handled trafficking cases we've worked on before. He's going to help us approach Global Vision the right way." 3 hours later, Joe sat in an FBI office with Carol and Agent Bill Rogers, a serious man with short gray hair and kind eyes. "Mr. Martinez, I understand your situation," Agent Rogers said. "But we need to proceed carefully. If your daughter was trafficked and has been living under another identity, the situation could be complicated." Joe nodded, trying to stay calm. "I just need to know if it's her. I need to find her." "I've scheduled a meeting with Global Vision Productions at noon," Agent Rogers explained. "They've agreed to share information about their documentary and the location where it was filmed. At the Global Vision office, they met with Diane Peters, the producer of the documentary. The segment you're asking about was filmed in a small village called San Miguel in Guatemala," Diane explained, pulling up a map on her computer. "It's very remote, about 3 hours from Guatemala City." "The young woman in the footage," Agent Rogers said. "Can you tell us who she is?" Diane nodded. "That's Elena Fuentes. She's a nursing student who volunteers with Medical Bridges, the organization we were profiling. She's been with them for about 2 years." Joe's heart raced. "Do you have contact information for this organization? For Elena?" "I can give you the contact for Medical Bridges," Diane said. "But I should warn you, the volunteers move around a lot and communication can be difficult in those remote areas." As they left the office, Joe could barely contain his emotions. "Elena Fuentes," he repeated, "but her real name is Lily Martinez." Agent Rogers put a hand on Joe's shoulder. "We don't know that for certain yet, Mr. Martinez, but we're going to find out." Agent Rogers made immediate contact with the FBI's International Operations Team. Within hours, they had located Medical Bridge's main office in Guatemala City and were working to find Elena Fuentes. The next day, Agent Rogers called Joe. "We have news. Elena Fuentes is currently working at a clinic in San Miguel, the village from the documentary. We've arranged for local authorities to visit the clinic with a photograph of Lily." Joe gripped the phone tightly. "When will we know?" "It might take a few days. The village is very remote." Those few days were the longest of Joe's life. He couldn't eat or sleep. He paced his apartment, looking at the photos of Lily on his wall. Could she really be alive? Living in Guatemala as a nursing student named Elena? It seemed impossible, yet he clung to hope. On the third day, Agent Rogers called again. "Mr. Martinez, I have news. The local authorities showed Lily's photo to the clinic staff. They confirmed that Elena Fuentes is physically similar to the photo. They've asked her to come to Guatemala City for a meeting." "I need to go there," Joe said immediately. "I need to see her myself." "We're working on that," Agent Rogers assured him. "If this is Lily, we'll need to proceed carefully. She may have experienced severe trauma." 2 more days passed before Agent Rogers called again. This time his voice was different, more urgent. "Mr. Martinez, we need you to come to our office right away." Joe rushed to the FBI building, his heart pounding. In Agent Rogers' office, he found Carol already waiting. "We've confirmed that Elena Fuentes is likely your daughter," Agent Rogers said without preamble. Her fingerprints matched Lily's school records. Joe collapsed into a chair, tears streaming down his face. "She's alive," he whispered. "My Lily is alive." "There's more," Agent Rogers continued gently. "We've spoken with Elena, with Lily. Her situation is complicated. She doesn't fully remember her life before Guatemala." Joe looked up, confused. "What do you mean?" "It appears she's suffering from a form of trauma-induced amnesia. She has fragments of memories from her past, but she's created a new identity as Elena Fuentes. She believes she's originally from Mexico." Carol took Joe's hand. "This happens sometimes with trafficking victims. The mind protects itself by blocking out traumatic experiences." "Does she know about me?" Joe asked, his voice breaking. "Agent," Rogers nodded. "We've told her that a man named Joe Martinez believes she is his daughter. She was understandably shocked and scared. She's agreed to meet with you, but she's very cautious." "When?" Joe asked. "When can I see her?" "We're arranging for her to come to the United States. It should take about a week to handle the paperwork." That week was both the longest and shortest of Joe's life. He cleaned his apartment from top to bottom. He took down the wall of investigation, the maps, photos, and red string that had dominated his life for 5 years. He wanted Lily to see a home, not a detective's office. Joe also met with Dr. Patel several times to prepare for the reunion. "She may not remember you at first," Dr. Patel warned. "And even if she does, she may be confused or afraid. The most important thing is to be patient and gentle." "I just want her to be okay," Joe said. "After everything she's been through, I just want her to be safe." The day finally arrived. Joe stood in a small conference room at the FBI office, his heart beating so hard he thought it might burst from his chest. Agent Rogers was with him, along with Dr. Patel and a translator, though they had been told Elena spoke English. The door opened, and a young woman walked in. Her hair was darker than Lily's had been, cut to her shoulders. She was thinner, and her face showed signs of hardship that hadn't been there before. But her eyes, those were Lily's eyes. For a moment, they just stared at each other. Joe wanted to rush forward and embrace her, but he remembered Dr. Patel's advice and stayed where he was. "Hello," he said softly. "I'm Joe." The young woman nodded slightly. "They told me you think I'm your daughter." Her voice was different, a bit lower with a slight accent, but Joe would have recognized it anywhere. "Yes," Joe said. "My daughter Lily disappeared 5 years ago. She was 17. Elena, Lily, looked uncertain. "I don't remember much from before. I have dreams sometimes, fragments, a blue house, a man fixing cars." Joe couldn't stop his tears. We lived in a blue house. I owned an auto repair shop. Lily's eyes widened slightly. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small worn photo. It showed a smiling man holding a fishing rod beside a lake. The photo was faded and creased, like it had been folded and unfolded many times. "I've always had this," she said, her voice trembling. "I don't know why I kept it hidden even from the family that took me in. Something told me it was important." Joe's legs nearly gave out beneath him. It was a photo from their last fishing trip before Lily disappeared. A trip to Lake Geneva when she was 16. "That's me," Joe said, pointing to the man in the photo. "That's us at Lake Geneva. You caught a fish so big we couldn't believe it. You named it Fred before we released it back into the lake." Something flickered in Lily's eyes, a flash of recognition. "Fred the fish," she whispered. Then she looked up at Joe with confusion. "How would I know that if I wasn't—" Dr. Patel stepped forward. "Memory is complex, especially after trauma. Some things stay with us even when we think they're gone." Lily looked back at the photo, then at Joe. "I'm not sure I'm ready to be Lily Martinez again. I've been Elena for so long now." "You can be whoever you need to be," Joe said. "I just want to be part of your life again. If you'll let me." For the first time since she entered the room, Lily smiled. That same smile Joe had seen on the documentary, the smile he had missed for 5 long years. "I think," she said slowly, "I would like that." In the weeks that followed their first meeting, Joe and Lily began the careful process of getting to know each other again. They met every few days, sometimes at the FBI office, sometimes at a quiet cafe near Joe's apartment. Dr. Patel joined them for the first few meetings, helping them navigate the complex emotions that surfaced. Lily wasn't ready to move in with Joe, or even to fully accept that she was Lily Martinez. She stayed in a hotel arranged by the FBI while they continued their investigation into what had happened to her. Agent Rogers assigned a female agent named Sandra Miller to work directly with Lily, helping her recall details that might lead to the arrest of the trafficking network. "I remember being at the mall," Lily told Agent Miller during one interview, as Joe sat quietly nearby. "I was waiting for a boy who never showed up. A woman approached me. She had blonde hair and a kind smile. She said she worked for a modeling agency and thought I had potential." Joe listened, his heart breaking as Lily described how the woman had convinced her to step outside to take some test photos. "She gave me a bottle of water. It tasted strange, but I drank it anyway. After that, everything is foggy. I remember being in a car, then in a house with other girls. We were moved around a lot. Different houses, different cities." "Do you remember how you ended up in Guatemala?" Agent Miller asked gently. Lily closed her eyes, trying to remember. "There was a transfer. They were moving us from one place to another. The van stopped at a gas station. The man watching us went inside. I saw a chance and I ran. I just ran and didn't look back." "That was very brave," Joe said softly. Lily gave him a small smile. "I was terrified. I had no idea where I was. I didn't even know what country I was in. A family found me, the Fuentes family. They took me in, even though I couldn't tell them who I was or where I came from. They named me Elena." Over time, more of Lily's memories began to return. She remembered the blue house in Cedar Grove. She remembered her mother, who had died when she was 8. She remembered her friends Katie and Ashley. But there were still large gaps in her memory, and some things she remembered differently than they had actually happened. Dr. Patel explained that this was normal for trauma survivors. "The mind protects itself," she told Joe and Lily, sometimes by changing memories, sometimes by blocking them completely. 1 month after their reunion, Lily agreed to visit Joe's apartment. She stood in the doorway for a long moment, looking around. "I used to have pictures of you all over these walls," Joe explained. "Maps and strings connecting all the places I thought you might be." Lily walked slowly around the small living room. On the coffee table was a photo album Joe had prepared. Pictures of Lily growing up, of their family, of their life in Cedar Grove. "May I?" she asked, gesturing to the album. Of course, Joe said. It's for you. Lily sat on the couch and began turning the pages. Joe kept his distance, letting her explore her past at her own pace. He watched as she traced her fingers over the photos, sometimes smiling, sometimes frowning in concentration. This bike, she said, pointing to a picture of herself at 12, standing proudly next to a blue bicycle. I named it Lightning. I crashed it into Mrs. Wilson's rose bushes and got grounded for a week. Joe felt tears spring to his eyes. You remember? Lily nodded, still looking at the photo. Not everything, just pieces, like a puzzle with missing parts. That evening, Lily shared more about her life in Guatemala. After escaping her captors, she had wandered for days before the Fuentes family found her. They were poor but kind, taking her in despite having little to share. Their daughter Sophia was studying nursing, and Lily, or Elena, as they called her, became interested as well. The Fuentes family saved me, Lily said. They never asked questions about my past. Maybe they guessed what had happened. They just accepted me as I was. I'd like to thank them someday, Joe said, for taking care of you when I couldn't. As the weeks passed, Lily began to remember more. She worked with Agent Miller and other FBI agents to identify members of the trafficking network. Her testimony led to several arrests and the rescue of other victims. The blonde woman from the mall was identified as Karen Simmons, a recruiter for the trafficking ring who was now in custody. Lily also spoke with her old friends. Katie cried when they talked on the phone for the first time. I never gave up hope, Katie told her. I just knew you were out there somewhere. Through it all, Joe remained patient, giving Lily the space she needed while also being there whenever she reached out. Sometimes she would call him in the middle of the night, remembering something new from their past life. Other times she would go days without contacting him, overwhelmed by the process of reconciling her two identities, Lily Martinez and Elena Fuentes. 3 months after their reunion, Lily made a decision. She asked Joe to meet her at their usual cafe. I've been thinking a lot, she said when they were seated with their coffee, about who I am now. I'm not the same Lily who disappeared 5 years ago, but I'm not fully Elena either. Joe nodded, waiting for her to continue. I want to go back to school, Lily said, to finish my nursing degree. The work I did in Guatemala, helping people, making a difference, that's still important to me. That's wonderful, Joe said. There are great nursing programs right here in Chicago. Lily took a deep breath. I've applied to Northwestern, and I was wondering if your offer still stands, about living with you while I study. Joe felt his heart might burst with happiness. Of course it does, for as long as you want. No pressure. Lily smiled, that smile that Joe had missed for 5 long years. I can't promise it will be easy. I still have nightmares. There are still parts of me that are broken. We're all a little broken, Joe said. We'll figure it out together. 2 weeks later, Lily moved into Joe's spare bedroom. They established new routines, learning to live together as adults rather than as father and teenage daughter. Joe cooked breakfast each morning before heading to his job at the rideshare company. Lily studied for her nursing school entrance exams and continued her therapy with Dr. Patel. In the evenings, they sometimes looked through old photo albums, with Lily asking questions about events she couldn't remember clearly. Other times, they talked about her life as Elena, about the people she had helped in Guatemala, about the woman she had become. I want to go back someday, Lily told Joe one evening as they sat on the small balcony of the apartment. Not to stay, but to visit, to thank the Fuentes family properly. Would you come with me? I'd be honored, Joe said. 6 months after their reunion, Lily was accepted to Northwestern's nursing program. On the day her acceptance letter arrived, she asked Joe to take her to Lake Geneva, the place from the photo she had kept all those years. They stood by the lake, watching the sunset paint the water gold and pink. Joe thought about all the lanterns he had released here on Lily's birthdays, hoping somehow they would guide her home. Dad, Lily said, turning to him. It was the first time since their reunion that she had called him that. I remember now why I kept that photo of you, fishing. The day before I disappeared, you told me that no matter what happened in life, I could always find my way home by following my heart. That even if we were separated, we would find each other again, because that's what family does. Joe pulled his daughter into a gentle hug, tears streaming down his face. After 5 years of searching, after all the pain and fear and hope, they had found their way back to each other. Lily Martinez was home. As they walked back to the car, Lily looked up at the first stars appearing in the evening sky. You know what's strange? If none of this had happened, the kidnapping, Guatemala, all of it, I would never have become a nurse. I would never have helped all those people. Joe nodded. Life takes us on paths we never expected. The important thing is where we end, up, and who we become along the way, Lily added. Their story became an inspiration to other families of missing persons, a reminder that sometimes, against all odds, miracles do happen. Joe returned to Cedar Grove occasionally, speaking at events organized by Detective Bennett to raise awareness about human trafficking. Lily, when she was ready, joined him, sharing her story to help others understand the complexities of trauma and recovery. The road ahead would not be easy. There would be difficult days, setbacks, and painful memories. But together, Joe and Lily Martinez had already overcome the impossible. And that gave them the strength to face whatever came next, one day at a time, side by side.